Hey everybody, it's Rick from Dr. B's. I'm going to teach you today how to make a template to make your own pickguard.
Okay.
The guitar we're using today is my short scale beginner guitar. I've been experimenting with scale to make it easier for beginners to play. The thing that makes this a good one is it's top loaded, so the pickguard is going to sit here. The volume and tone control and the pickup are actually going to be mounted to the pickguard itself. Generally, we're going to be working in this area, so I always start with something that's definitely bigger than where we're working, because what you don't want to do is decide you need to make a little notch somewhere, and now a part of it is not covering one of the holes.
What have I done?
You just make sure you're being generous with how big of a piece you start with. Next thing is you want to try to find some locations where you can mark things so that when you put it back down here, because you're going to be picking it up, moving it, test fitting it, cutting it, and so forth. When you put it back down, you want to make sure you have it down in the same place. You don't want to use compound curves because you think, oh, I'll remember that this goes right here on this particular spot. When you go to line up again, it isn't that easy. I'm lucky with this guitar because I've got a couple lines here, and so that's what I'm going to be working from, and they carry through to the other end of the guitar. What I'll do is take some time. I'm going to draw lines to help me locate things. I'm going to draw these black lines, and I'm also going to lay a ruler against the sides of the fretboard and draw those lines as well, because that just helps me define things. I like to use these plastic rulers because they're rigid enough to be able to use as a straight edge, but they won't nick up the guitar. So what I do is put this on here, I line it up with the black line, and I start drawing. So when I put this back down, I know right where it goes. I drew that line, I'm going to draw the one over here, and you'll see why these lines become important here in a couple minutes. I'm also going to lay this against the fretboard and draw the line so that I know exactly where the fretboard is. It just helps me get landmarks. Same thing over here against the fretboard. Just helps me define where that fretboard would go if I were projecting it on down here. Once I get that done, I know I need to find certain markings, and I'll show you a real quick way to do that, something that's really effective, and that is using some blue painter's tape. I know that the bridge is going to go here. I'm just going to quickly locate it with a screw and a couple of holes, and then in order to locate things, I'm just going to take some painter's tape, quickly strike a couple lines here, and I'm going to carry them out well beyond where you would think you need them to go. So I just lay it down there straight. Nothing's going to happen over here, but I do have a line along this edge of the bridge, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Just going to quickly take that tape, set it there, and so the benefit of doing that is when I set this back over top, I can see where this edge of that bridge is going to be. It's going to be there. Hot damn! And so as I move down here, I can see where I'm going to need to cut out for the bridge. Same thing here. So now that I've got those markings, I'll show you what I mean. I take the bridge off, I set this back on the original markings, and I know that the front edge of the bridge lines up with this tape. Take my ruler, line it up with the edge of the tape, draw a line. That's where I'll have to cut to miss the bridge. Always making sure that my marks are back on. Same thing here. I know the inner edge of the bridge is the inner edge of this tape, and so that's going to be here. And then I can cut.
Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
A lot of people use these little things that they put on a cutting surface or a countertop when they're going to cut, and they work real good for this kind of thing as well. I just take my knife at this point and cut those lines that I drew. So that's cutting out for the first obstruction, which would be the bridge, and that tells me where the bridge is going to go. Now when I set this on there, once I do that cutout based on these tape lines, that's where the bridge is going to go, and that has to be relieved, which it is, so that the pickguard will fit around the bridge when the bridge is screwed into that position.
It's just a guide.
Once again, always checking my lines here to make sure that I'm located back where I was before. So now I got that cutout done. The next thing I'm going to look at is I've got these openings that I must avoid. And so I can take the same tape, make a couple of other quick lines. I'm going to run along this side of this opening, this side of this opening. Doesn't need to be super exact. You're just trying to get the general idea of where this needs to be. And again, you want to carry these lines on a good distance because they got to overhang that cardboard when I put it back on there, and you'll see this in just a second. Now, when I put my cardboard template back on there, I line up the lines here, and I know now the farthest end of that cavity opening is here because I've lined up the ruler with the blue tape. This end of it is here. The inner edge of it, again, lining up with the blue tape. The inner edge of it is here. Now I run into a little bit of a problem here. Realistically, how big is this pickguard going to be? It's not going to hang off over here. And in order to see my line that I made with that tape, I'm going to go ahead and remove a little bit of this pickguard material, the template material, where I know that I'm not going to need it, so that I can visualize this line. And then once again, I align the ruler with that tape, draw a line, and I know that I have to avoid that, because if I cut this thing, realize that this is rounded, of course. Remember, I'll show you the opening in a second here, but it's rounded like this kind of, and all you have to do is get approximate. But I know that if I cut here, I'm going to be into the opening. So that was a quick way to just get where that opening is so I can see it. And then as I'm cutting, I know I have to stay outside of that or I'm going to expose this hole. Same thing happens with the pickup cavity. Realign my marks. This can be done kind of quickly. It doesn't need to be super duper exact. And I know that opening goes to these black lines, so I didn't need to mark the other two parts of it. So now I know the extent of where I need to go with my pickguard, what I need to avoid. And what I need to avoid is this hole here and this hole here. From this point, what I try to do is to pick up some of the lines of the guitar. So over here, what I'll do is I'll want to come around. I want to get kind of close to this opening, but I don't want to get too close. So I'll probably be somewhere in this vicinity. And what I'll want to do here is I'll want to try and pick up the curve of the guitar. So as the guitar body goes this way, so do I. I can swerve back in at whatever point I like. So I got to stay over here somewhere in order to cover that opening adequately. And what I'll do in order to pick up this line of the guitar and be consistent with the lines is I'll align my border with this black line. And so that will be the border on this side. And that gives me some idea where to cut, make this initial cut. I know I'm covering that pickup cavity. I will round this off just to stick with the rounded lines of the guitar. Again, I missed that pickup cavity, so I'm not exposing that there. And then the same thing over here. Now, it's a matter of style at this point. So I'm going to try and pick up this swooping line of the guitar body here, running my finger against the guitar body to get this distance, and then swooping with the guitar body just to get that line. As I swoop this way, I'll curve it back into the guitar. I'm trying to match this body contour, and so I drew that line. I'll just kind of draw the curve to bring it back in to complete it so that it's not a sharp, straight corner here, because most of the body of the guitar is very curvy. I established my landmarks that I needed to have. I kept contouring with a piece, and in the interest of time, what I ended up with was this. So you can see that these lines still match up. It avoids the bridge, and it picks up the line of the guitar. So it matches this curve of the guitar, it matches this swoop here, and then curves back in, and try to approximate a curve on this side to match that. That's going to be the shape of the pick guard. What I'm going to do next is take my pick guard material. It's going to be black, but I don't have the appropriate black pick guard material here, so I'm using this piece of light ply to illustrate. But what you would do at this point is use some double-faced tape, stick the template to your pick guard material so that it doesn't move, and then cut on the bandsaw around that line, making a little bit of space, and then trim it from there. I'll end up with the shape I need. I'll sand and curve all of these. If the bandsaw kind of bit into something a little bit, I'll make sure that's curved and smoothed out. I'm ready to go. From that point, the only things left to do are locate where the tone and volume controls are going to be. I know my cavity here is this outline. I want to keep them as far away from the bridge and picking as I can, and so I've made my marks here where the volume and tone controls will be. I do the same thing with the pickup cavity. The pickup cavity won't be as big as it is routed because the humbucker will be mounted directly to the back of the pick guard once I got it done. This is the same approach I used for the Flying V. Here's the template that I made for the Flying V pick guard, same kind of thing, cardboard and tape. The last thing that I had to do with either of these is put the holes in, because you're going to screw it obviously to the top of the guitar. And that's a place where you really have to just kind of look and try to play it by ear as best you can. You want to try and make sure that the holes don't look like there's 3 holes here and only 1 down here and 1 over there. So you want to try and balance them out a little bit and have them at places where you feel like you need them. If you feel like this corner is going to lift up, you probably want to put a screw there and here and on this corner. And then you kind of want to go, okay, if I've got screws in those locations, do I just put 1 more in between here or 2? And if I do that, how many can I place over here? Less is usually more. You just want enough to hold the thing down. It's kind of a style choice. I suppose if you were making something that was a little bit more of a metal guitar or a steampunk, you might want a whole bunch of screws. You might put them much closer together. In most cases, you won't do that. Once you've got your screw hole areas planned out, you can punch actually through this cardboard, make a little indentation in the surface of the guitar, take this off, drill the pilot holes with the drill, and go from there. But now you've got those holes marked on the template. Once again, you lay the template back over the cutout pickguard material that you have and mark the screw holes. Last thing you do is countersink the screw holes. The screws have a little bit of a dish on the back side of them. They aren't completely flat, so they sit down in, and so you want to countersink the holes that they're going to go into. I usually do that by hand. I just drill the holes in the pick guard. I make sure the holes are big enough that the screws I'm using will just fit in those holes. And then I just take the countersink by hand and move it and dish out where the head of that screw is going to go. And then you're done. You put it in place and everybody's happy.
Tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
So once again, you can do this whole thing by quickly marking with painter's tape to establish the lines that you need, where these openings are. There's a much easier way to do this, but if you've never done a pick guard before, you might not want to do that. You can actually invest in transparent material or translucent material where you could just lay it on here and draw all these things. It's much simpler, but a lot of people don't want to go through that expense to buy some translucent template material. And it's kind of fun to just do it yourself and work it out. So I usually just work it out with cardboard. If I were mass producing and needed to work at speed, it'd be a whole different thing. But I usually don't, and I kind of want to take that time and develop it and see where it goes. So I do the cardboard method. Works just fine. It ended up with a nice pick guard on the Flying V, and this one will be just as nice. Cardboard, quickly mark the openings, keep whittling away at your cardboard until you get the shape that you want, and then transfer all of your holes and so forth to the guitar, and then to the pick guard once you cut it out of the material, and you're golden. You don't have to be constructing a new guitar. Some people decide to make a different pick guard for their existing guitar. So there's a lot of applications here. You can also watch my glue up if you want to see how I glue a neck blank together. That video is out there as well. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a few techniques here that'll help you as you're working on your own guitar. If nothing else, it got you thinking about something you might be able to do on your own and upgrade your guitar a little bit. Like and subscribe. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I answer every comment that I get, so I will get you an answer to your question. And keep watching.